The only thing you asked me before this podcast is to be willing to be my vulnerable and authentic self.
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, I could do that, no problems. But you asked me the questions that held me to account to being that vulnerable and authentic self. So thank you. I've got this really good vibe right now, feeling right now. I'm like.
Welcome to another episode of Bigger Than the Hustle podcast. And again, we have our next international guest all the way from Australia. Now, Dave got introduced to me by Layla, and she said that he's an awesome guy. So that's why I've got him on, and luckily he accepted my invitation to come on. Now, he has so many accolades and so many titles against his name. I'm not even going to go into it because I'm sure there's so much to talk about. But he's an amazing human being and an amazing person. So I'm just going to hand over the mic to him. So just before we do that, hi, Dave.
G'day, Bhavik. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I am fantastic, actually. It's such an exciting opportunity. I've been waiting for this because we booked this podcast. It must be like 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago. It feels like it was so long ago. And I'm like, I can't believe it's finally here.
Brilliant. So I'm just going to hand over the microphone to you. If you could introduce yourself to the listeners and how you come into the world, and then we can go into the conversation from there.
Every time you say how I came into the world, I want to tell you about my mother. So my name is Dave Clare. I am the proud husband of my wife, Tova, who we've been married now for, I better get this right in case she watches this, right? This is coming for our 14th anniversary next week, actually. So 14 years, and proud father of 3 children. 2 of them are mine biologically, and my other son, Dylan, who's not mine biologically, but we're half the Brady Bunch. And to me, I share that first because to me, that's what's really most important about life. We could talk anything about business and everything like that, but in the end of it, being an amazing husband, as I like to think of myself, and an amazing father, to a beautiful wife and beautiful children is what's most important to me in life. So it's really exciting. So beyond all that stuff, the other stuff that I am is I'm the CEO and founder of an organization called Circleleadership Global. We can talk a little bit more of that in a moment. I'm also the ambassador for the Pacific region for the Global Company Culture Association. So I was the very first appointed ambassador for that. I'm a mentor with Inspiring Rare Birds, which is an organization that mentors female leaders and entrepreneurs. And I was the very first male mentor picked by that organization here in Australia. And now that was about 5 years ago. And now there's about 40% of the mentors are men. So it's awesome to be able to participate in that. I'm also the author of a book called Simplified, which is all about leadership. Leadership is simple. You lead people. I co-authored another book called The Pandemic Playbook, which is a really funny story in that one. And I'm also a co-author of another amazing book, which has gone on to become a bestseller. I don't think of myself as a best-selling author, but the book itself has, which is called Women Leading More Now. And outside of that, as you're well aware, Bhavik, that I also tout myself as the husband of the year for 13 years in a row, going for 14 this year, and father of the year at least twice, and a notorious Elvis impersonator.
Brilliant. Now, a few threads kept coming through in a lot of the stuff that we talked about there, which was the word leadership. Now, we now more than ever understand the importance of good leadership in not just in terms of organizations, but within our own households, within our environments, whether that be organizational, whether that be sporting, whichever it is, leadership is so important. Now, from the little introduction you gave there, where has this interest come in leadership, and why was it so important for you to share a message and craft your own message to try and help people think in a different way about it?
Yeah, great question. And it's funny for me to answer. I've only been asked this question once or twice, but I didn't, like when you're at school and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, I want to be a leadership guy or a leadership girl. That wasn't how it panned out. I was blessed with great parenting. I think, there's the whole nurture versus nature argument about leadership. And I really believe you can create and develop leadership in people. But I was certainly blessed with some amazing attributes through my parents. So certainly that was, I had some that stuff in it actually, that I think is important from a leadership point of view. But how all this leadership stuff came about is, I guess, It was quite funny. I was just sharing the story with my daughter tonight. We were having dinner, and we're talking about, that she's 21 now, and she's got an opportunity to become the assistant manager in the organization she's a part of. And she was talking about leadership, and I was telling her, like, when I was her age, that, I was just really good with people, and I cared about people, and I had a good work ethic. I was driven. And so because of that, when opportunities came, they said, we just need someone who can supervise and do all this stuff. And I said, well, I'll do it. And so I sort of progressed through a banking and finance career in my early days. And I just had this natural flair for working with people and getting people to work together and achieve goals together. But the real pivotal point for me when I realized it was around the whole concept of leadership was my very first mentor outside my mom or dad was a man named John McGinnis. And he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I think first and foremost, that's a great sign of what a great mentor is, when they can see something in you that you just don't see yourself. And he saw this massive potential for leadership in me. And then he invested in me in, not only programs and courses, but his time and his energy. And I didn't even realize it at the time. It's only in hindsight and reflection as I went back through my own journey that I realized that John had really had a vested interest in me, and he invested in me. And but what I learned first was the most important thing about leadership was about personal leadership, is like how to learn how to lead myself. And because over the years now, after all my years of experience, and I might be circling around a little bit here, but I've developed my definition of leadership. So it might help understand this in context. And my definition of leadership is that leadership's all about helping other people become the best version of themselves so they can do their life's best work while they're in your care and beyond. And that means nowhere in that definition does it say you have to have a position or a title to be a leader. It just, so John was helping me become the best version of myself so I could do my life's best work while I was in his care and beyond. And that meant that he cared about me as a human being first, an employee second, because he invested in me not in Bank Johnny type or bank programs. He invested me in personal development programs and personal leadership and goal setting and how your mind works and basic psychology, so I could understand how to use my own mind and tools of my heart to set and achieve goals. And then I did so well through that process and the programs they put me on that they then asked me to become the trainer, like the facilitator, learn how to facilitate that to other people. So I learned how then to help other people become the best version of themselves. And then through that, then I just took on another opportunity to lead a larger team, and it kind of like just snowballed from there. I'd like to say, and everything, in my career in banking was just taking on bigger team. I didn't care about the next rank or promotion. I looked for the next opportunity to serve more people. And then it came to a stage where I couldn't go any further in the bank that I was in at the time here in Australia when I lived here before. I'm a Canadian. And then, so I took an opportunity. There was an opportunity to move to Papua New Guinea as a leadership development consultant to just purely do leadership development with the national and expatriate managers and the national managers of the then Papua New Guinea Banking Corporation in New Guinea. So then it was take the leadership thing to the next level and go out just and purely do leadership, not all the other management stuff that comes with it. And then it went from there. Then I left there and came back to Australia for my daughter to be born. And then we went back to Canada. And then I bought into a license of an international organization, which was Leadership Management International. And then I went out and started my own business, working with successful business leaders, entrepreneurs, owners, and helping them become greater leaders and so on. So, it just with this, it wasn't initially by design, you feel like. It was more by default and circumstance or, and if I always wonder, like, what if John hadn't noticed that in me? Where would I be today? What would I be doing? Those sliding door moments of life or something. And I don't know what the other moment would have been. But it's everywhere I've gone and everywhere I've been, and then to come back to, it's always been about leadership and helping other people and being of service to other people and helping them become the best that they can be. And that's where, I'd love to say it was like, oh, I set my mind on this and I did that, and then it was this. It was that voice in the back of your head. It was, what they call it, intuition or instinct, or I just love doing it. I just love seeing people evolve and grow and do amazing things and surprise themselves. I wanted them to feel like I felt when John invested in me. Yeah.
And I think, as you said there, the core definition of leadership has changed so much. Even in my, I've only been in industry. Well, I've had my own business for 20 years, but it's from the way I see it as a lead, so I run my own organization, I have staff, etc. And the way I see it is that my role as the person in charge is to facilitate this people that work, with me, alongside me, to make their job somehow easier if I'm trying to, make it easier for them to do their job, as opposed to, make it more tough. And what I think in an organization, in terms of the setting of an organization, is very structured. I know it's becoming a lot more flat, and I'm so happy to see that, because I think that's the best way most human beings work, with people, because organization is just people, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Now, we talk about leadership within an organization, we talk about leadership within communities, within our households.
Yeah.
From the skills you have and the things you've learned, how do you become the best leader of yourself?
Best leader of yourself? Wow, you're just full of great questions. That's the first time I've ever been asked that. How do you become the best leader of yourself? Well, I'll tell you what I do. So for me, every year I set a theme for myself. Right? Because once again, I understand that, like, if I don't continue to evolve, I can't create capacity or space for my team to evolve. Therefore, my business won't evolve. And if I don't seek to become the best that I can be, then how am I supposed to help my team become my best, or their best? Sorry. Right? So if I don't become my best, how does my team become their best? And what do our clients deserve from us? What do they deserve?
The best. Yeah, the best.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So our clients deserve, our customers deserve the very best of us.
Yeah.
So I need to help the team become the very best. So if I don't, so I need to constantly make sure that I'm evolving as a human being. And then I might have growth spurts within that. And so every year I set a theme for myself as to what's the next evolution of me. So 3 years ago, I said my theme was to become steadfast. I needed to become more steadfast and in the things that I was working on. Stick to what it was I was working on, what I was building, and not get, distracted by anything, and just be steadfast in everything that I did. And then after that, once I really had got that, then last year, my theme of evolution for me was to consolidate everything, because now I've got very clear on my direction and where I'm going, and everything, and I've kind of got rid of the things that didn't matter. Now I need to consolidate and strengthen and build, and and so everything that I've done now in terms of is all around the focus of evolution. So I have a Next 90 Business Evolution process. I run the Business Evolution Summit. I have my own Evolution of Business podcast. So everything became around that. And then this year, as the organization now is starting to gain greater momentum, and we're, got a much bigger team and all that, and our client base is like doubled in the last 12 months. And so now, as I look at what leader do I need to become like myself, and once again, the leader that I need to be as a human being, my own sense of personal leadership, and this impacts all areas of life anyway. And so my theme for this year is discipline. And I need to become more disciplined in everything I do, my fitness, my health and well-being, my relationships, my time I spend, making sure that, as my own sense of personal leadership, that I make time for me. Because last year I sort of pushed myself to the side because the business was, it had doubled as it had evolved. I didn't spend any time for me. So this year I'm spending time for my children, to make sure I'm spending time with my wife. But also more importantly, you talk about personal leadership, is making sure I'm making time for me. Mm-hmm. And having the discipline in place, that for my health, my well-being, and my passions. Like I love golf, and last year I probably golfed, 15 rounds. I've already probably golfed almost 15 rounds this year, and we're only 3 months into it. So, because it's my thing, I enjoy to get out and escape and do. And last year I pushed it on the shelf and didn't do it. So this year's all about discipline. So I have things, I'm far more productive. I've planned my week out better, my days out better. My health, my well-being, all of it, mate. So, and then do you think that that's going to roll on? And the more disciplined I become as a human being, do you think that's going to have a positive or productive impact on my work? Yeah. The more I consolidated my life, that had a greater impact, because leadership is a holistic thing. It's not, I just become a better leader at work.
Yeah.
Leadership is all about becoming the best version of you so you can do your life's best work. And it's your life's best work, not just your best work.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I agree
So
with that.
I see personal leadership and do you think then that would make me a better spouse? It'll make me a better parent? Will it make me a better contributor to my community, my church or anything like that, or whatever else it is, your religion that you're a part of, your community, make you a better neighbor? Will it make you a better brother, sister, whatever it might be?
Yeah. And I think what's important as well with discipline is that you're leading by action. So it's your actions that are showing what you're doing as opposed to just speaking. It's your, shown by your journey. And discipline for me, the phrase that I resonated with most when I heard it was discipline is freedom. And for me, it's really important to have a structure, especially because I know that doing little things all the time, like little steps, lead to bigger outcomes. So if we plan now for next year, those things can happen by, like you said, having the discipline. And also what I find is that when you're almost leave yourself open, so you say your free will to take you where you want to go, almost it can become to a point where I work really well when I know I've got this, then I've got this, and I've got this, so I know what I'm working on, why I'm doing them. Now, if someone said next 3 hours you can do what you want, I'll almost do nothing because there'll be a plethora of choices that I'll end up, flutting around thinking I'll do this idea, and by the time I've thought of something, that 3 hours are finished because I work so much better with discipline, and I found that in all areas of my life. So, like you said, for me, business, health, relationships, well-being, all those things are so important that give me the energy to be the best version of myself. So and the phrase I like to use is to shine my light bright so people around me can shine their light bright for the people around them, Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's, when you think about like the word discipline, like it means training, right? And so to me, discipline is about putting systems and processes in place to create freedom. And I love that what you were saying there, because to me, that's what it's all about. It's not about the more disciplined I become, the more time I have the more time I make for those things that are important to me. That's why I'm getting out in the golf course more. That's why I'm spending more time with my wife, because I've become more disciplined. And even when you think I'm probably one of the most creative, spontaneous people that you'll meet. And like the most disorganized, so I crave structure, right? That's why people are like, I can't believe you. You're the most organized person I know. I have a planner, I have everything. I said, that's because I know that I am spontaneous, right? So here's something interesting for you when you think about that time. I actually block time out in my calendar, my planner, for planned spontaneity.
That's brilliant.
So I can block out time to do whatever the heck I feel like doing at that moment, because I know I need that. I can't no, you must do this. You must I know that, hey, I've got this really creative urge about something. I might make a note and then I put it in my planned spontaneity time. And then I can just be spontaneous and do what I want. If I want to create something, work on something, tweak something, just go out and do something, catch up with a friend, take the wife out for a surprise, whatever. It's planned. And I don't feel guilty for doing it.
Yeah. And I think then you can really enjoy the moment as well, because you know everything else is in order. So therefore that 1 hour or that evening or that weekend, that it's because you're going to be back on it, right? On the next, whether it be next hour, the next working day, the next week, whatever it is, your structure's in place. And I get that. I think I have this, I don't know if it's called anxiety or something, where if I'm not on top of things, I feel very disorientated, as in I find I'm thinking about a lot of things and I know, okay, I need to get this sorted, I need to get this sorted. And if it's not in my list and I'm not on top of them, then it's a case, I need to get on top of them for me to feel like the ship it's not in choppy waters at the moment. It's sailing peacefully through life. Now, Dave, if we go back to a young Dave, as you're growing up, like you said, leadership's a thread that runs through your life now, and it's really important to you. Where do you think this came from, as in from a younger age, when you were growing up? Was there anything that apart from obviously parents and other role models you had, was there anything that gave you the inspiration to continue this journey as you got older?
No, like I only struggle to answer that because a lot of it was because of my parents. Like my dad has been a staunch volunteer his whole life. So he believed in leadership through community service. Like that's how he learned about leadership as a young fellow. My grandfather, his dad, left him when he was like I think 3 or 5 years old. So he didn't really have a dad as a role model. My grandmother raised him and my auntie. But I look at him and his service and, you know, the things that he did and gave him back to his community. And so being of service and volunteering and being a Rotarian or in the JCs or Junior Chamber of Commerce or any organization, that you choose to be of service to, like to me, that was a massive influence to me. So whilst it was my parents, it was what he was doing and seeing his contribution to that. Outside of that, like my circle of friends, like I was always kind of like the father figure in my circle of friends. I was always the responsible one who'd make sure if we all go out to have a good time, that I make sure everyone got home. I'm the guy who would, not drink so that I could drive my friends home and know that they got home safely, and even, it was like, you just think of all these influences in your life. Like I was just so concerned about their health and their well-being and their safety and happiness. And I was always happy to be, the entertainer, the idiot, if you want for better, in terms of like humorous idiot. And I have people laugh at me or laugh with me as long as you're laughing. Like I wanted to make people feel good. And I wanted to, I can always joke that if my, this leadership stuff doesn't pan out for me, I think I've got a staunch career in stand-up comedy. I think there's still a chance for me. Have
you ever tried it?
Like even it's like I wasn't the head boy at school. I didn't do any of that sort of stuff. But I was always not that I would say I was the leader in my circles of friends. I was just the one who was happy to be of service. There's some people who say, "Hey, can you get me a drink?" Or you just go up and get a drink and you get them a drink anyway, just a glass of water, whatever. And people are like, "Why'd you go get them a drink?" They're just telling you what to do. So I didn't get it because they asked me to. I did it because I like to be of service to people. I just, yeah, so once again, I don't know if that's the nurture part, but the other influences, with just other leaders or other managers that I've had through my life. And I just, I'm a firm believer. I learned from every single leader or manager I ever had. Oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. I'm not going to become that type of leader. I'm not going to be that. That's not the way I want to treat people. I can't think if there was, other than the other leaders around me that I was willing to learn from, the influences of my social circles, my own personal development, but it all stemmed back from my parents. Yeah. Which is quite funny because I've got two amazing brothers, but neither of them have been big volunteers or, assumed like leadership roles or anything in their organizations that they've been a part of. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it definitely is, especially that, like I said, the sibling relationship, because I am the middle of three, so I am
same here, the middle child.
Yeah. So it's funny. Our stories are slightly different because I have an older sister and a younger brother, and they are both. So like my sister is a teacher, my brother's an accountant, and my dad and my mom. So it's like I have two dads and two moms in my life. So like you said, everything you just mentioned there about the way you think and the way you look after people, that's my brother. So my younger brother is that person, on his stag do. So, a stag do when you go out pre-wedding and you go out with the boys and you just go and enjoy yourself. Yeah. So on his stag do, he would get up every morning and cook breakfast for everyone when he was supposed to be the one that's
Yeah.
So I get that. Whereas I'm being the black sheep of the family, where I am being more or less the more creative person and live my life by the minute as opposed to planning so much. And and like I said, I think we get different energies from both our parents. And sometimes I don't know how my parents are married because they're both bipolar opposites. My dad is the outgoing, outspoken one. My mom is the homely, homemaker. And I love that I have both parts in me, and it's grateful. So if we sort of move forward to today, what do you think inspires you most today?
What inspires me most today? And God, deep, rich questions. What inspires me most today is it's a feeling, or I think I'm starting to finally see a bit of a shift. And because the world that I play in, I mean, there's a whole bunch of other things that inspire me, but I'm starting to see a bit of a shift in, let's call it humanity in the workplace. That organizations are starting to realize that people matter. They're not a means to an end anymore. We can't keep treating people like a resource. And I think it's funny, like I joke with people a little bit half-heartedly, but part seriously, that one of the amazing things about this pandemic time that we've been through is that with all of us having to be sent to our rooms and not being able to, be out and hang out with each other, and, the most devastating thing for social creatures is to not allow them to be social, is especially in the workplace, this is how a lot of work started getting done in like this time last year, right? This was a massive shift 12 months ago. This is how everyone had to work. And people started learning more about each other. Like I remember talking to clients, and they were saying, one of my clients, they were having their weekly team meeting, and just for fun and something to do, because they were doing it all via online meetings and stuff, they said, okay, every Monday we're going to have a dress up day. So for our team meeting, you just got to come dressed up as something. And speaking of the leaders, they're sitting there, your typical thing, like a cat will jump up on your lap, like, oh, I didn't even know you had a cat, things. But the one young fella, he's the 3-piece suit guy. He's always, the very prim, proper, well-dressed. And doesn't he show up on their first Monday meeting in a full-blown Super Mario outfit? What? Just it forced people to get to learn more about each other, because we take so much for granted when we sit in the same space. And so to bring it back to what inspires me most, I think it sort of let a little bit of light in to bring more humanity back into the workplace, to start to seek to understand each other more as human beings and what we're all made up of and stuff. So I'm inspired to see, shift in organizational structures, and, a lot of really role model organizations starting to appear and show up, which I think is fantastic that are doing that. And for me, in the world that I play in, that's like, say, I believe in looking at, if you're a part of my team, you're a human being first and an employee second. So I care about you, the person, and your goals and your dreams and your aspirations and everything you want. And then I'll worry about you as the employee. But until I understand that about you, it really doesn't matter what I know about you as the employee. Yeah. Right? Because I can't help you become the best version of you and do your life's best work unless I really care about you. And so I'm starting to see a lot more care and compassion and sense of the humanity and the humans in the workforce. And that like inspires the crap out of me.
Yeah. And like you said, it's just one of the hats we wear, isn't it? Employee, brother, partner, husband, dad, etc. And if I think there's a space for all of those hats to wear them all well, if we, like you said, manage and understand what drives us, what inspires us, what gives us the energy to be the best version of ourselves, So
what if we just had to wear one hat? That just says, I wear the Dave hat.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that frustrates me a little bit is, when someone then acquires the husband hat and the friend's hat gets thrown in the bin, it's like you can't, that kind of thing, really. It's like,
that's a whole separate podcast, mate. That's
it. It's like, I'm a dad, but then I still like going with my friends on a weekend, just the boys. And just like, we still like to go out and party, me and my wife, even though we're mom and dad. It's those things. And
yes, but if you look at it, like if you take like a typical baseball hat or cap, it's got a whole bunch of panels. It's one hat. But we're all multidimensional. There's you, the dad. There's you, the friend. There's you, the husband. There's you, the business person. But it's 100%. All one hat.
So if we take a peek behind the curtain, is there anything that you're proud about yourself that not many people know?
Wow. I'm proud about myself that not many people would know. Like, I'm usually quick to tell everybody how great I am. That would be my wife's answer. There'd be so many things that, I always like that's that's a really tough question. Like my children always say, like I'm more proud. I'm more proud of them than anybody will ever know. Even though they think I'm very proud of my children, people have no idea how deep and rich that goes for me. But things. Let's pick my book. So when I wrote my book, Simplified, that for me was one of my greatest achievements. Not because I wrote, it was actually just because I did it. And like whether the book turned out to be a bestseller or whatever, people like, you wrote the book, why? And all that. So I wrote the book so my children would know what the problem that dad was passionate about solving in the world. And as long as my 3 children understood that, whatever it sold beyond 3 copies or the 3 copies that I bought to give to each of them, they got 1, 2, and 3. I could care less. Like I care. Like when I say I could care less, it's like I do care. But I don't care at the same level as I did at them now having in print. So if anything ever happened to me, I know that my children would understand the problem that dad was passionate about solving in the world. Yeah. And that, other than my kids themselves and the deep pride I have for each of them as individuals, that would be, for me, that very few people would understand that about the book, because I think it's obviously a business book. It's there. But the reason I wrote it, the main motivation for writing it, was I just wanted my kids to know.
Yeah.
And they each have a copy now of that book, and they know what, and in there, my inscription to each of them was, now you know the problem that dad's passionate about solving. I encourage you and inspire you to go find yours.
That's beautiful. And it is so important, again, that not just you've written it, but you've communicated that as well. So that, like you said, there's a legacy that's left where, years after you've moved on to your next journey, that can, that can be referred to. It's like, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I want to start a little 5-minute video thing, and I need to just start it, which is answering questions that my children may have for me if I'm not here, and I'd like to create a little database of videos just for them, no one else, that they can draw upon that, if I'm not around anymore, how would have dad answered this question if I asked them, So it's a little project that I'm going to take on for myself. And
that's a great, that's great.
It is, and it also, the way I see it is that we are here as guides. We are here as supports. I'm not here to tell them what to do. I'm here to guide them, and then they make their own decisions. I want them to fall down so they can stand up and learn how to stand up. We can try and soften the blow a little bit, but I know sometimes, looking back at my own childhood, it's the hardest falls that I learned the most from. And I'm still here, and that's helped me live the life I have. I think we as parents can sometimes be, especially now, over parents, like micromanaging a lot of, our children and the way they come into the world, right? But I remember, now my son will go to my daughter. So my son is 10 years old and my daughter is 14 years old. Yeah. So my son goes to my wife and says, "Oh, I'm bored." And she'll be like, "Okay, so get some coloring, or why don't you do this, or why don't you play this, or all this." And I said to him, "Let's and then when he comes to me, "Daddy, I'm bored," I say, "Good. It's good to be bored. Be bored, because then your brain will think of something to do, right?" Yeah. And he's like, "Okay, then Daddy's not going to give me an answer, so I'm just going to go off and find something," right? And I remember when we were growing up, if we'd gone to my mom and said, "We're bored," and she said, "What are you telling me for?" It's almost like so you had to always keep thinking of new things to do, because you knew there was going to be no response. And I love that kind of response,
Yeah. Now, but if you say, "I'm bored here, do this," then they haven't learned how to move out of boredom.
That's my point, Dave. This is exactly my point. I say to my wife, "Don't tell him. He will work it out for himself when there's no response."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's such a powerful concept. And the concept that, instantly my brain goes to leadership. This is one of the biggest challenges that leaders have today. That I get 2 things from leaders. I wish my team were more accountable, and I wish they would learn to think for themselves. And I say, "Talk to me about how you raised your children." "Oh, I would tell them how to this, and I would tell them that, and I would tell them that." And guess what? Those children are now working for somebody else, and that person's children are working for you. And we've all been telling our kids what to do, and then we're wondering why as employees they don't know how to think for themselves. We've conditioned them not to think for themselves. So now you have to help them to learn how to think for themselves. I don't accept I don't know as an answer. Go find something, I don't care, the smallest little bit that you do know, come back to me with that. And then we can start from there, because now we can start from a position of what you do know, not what you don't know.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. And I'm fully on board with that, because like I said, I think there's a saying, and I'm going to butcher this saying anyway, but I'm going to try it anyway. It's I think it's like 1% of people think they think, 1% people want to think, and 98% people would rather die than think. So,
that's a sad statistic.
So much of life these days is numbing, isn't it? So what I mean by that is like, numb yourself with food, numb yourself with alcohol, numb yourself with drugs, with entertainment, with, rather than actually sitting down and thinking about stuff and really looking forward and thinking, okay, where, in the next year or next 2 years, where do I want my life to be? What don't I like about my life now? And what kind of things can I start doing now to make sure when I look back that this was the best day? How can I talk to my future self? My future self will look back at my present self and say, thank you for making those decisions, because now life is like this. And it's that patience, discipline, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's it's such an important thing, like just not even just for kids, but just for life in general. Like, the conditioning influence that we've received, it's caused a lot of problems. And this is why we have people, that 98% who are afraid to think, because we've conditioned it out of them. There's a massive, massive difference between knowledge and, say, wisdom, or knowledge and learning. There's so many people I know who are very knowledgeable, subject matter experts, but does not mean they can do anything with it. You can acquire knowledge, but what are you going to do with that knowledge? Like, it's almost like just, you can memorize stuff. That's great. But if you can't interpret it, apply it, take action on it, learn from it, make mistakes with it, and then develop wisdom and experience from it, then it doesn't matter. Yeah. And we have all these book smart, or let's say memory banks walking around but they think that, but that's not learning how to think. That's learning how to retain. Yeah. There's a massive difference between retaining information and applying information.
Yeah. And there's almost an argument about retaining information when it's almost pointless, because everything's at the touch of our fingerprints now, isn't it? Like you type into Google and you can find the information. And that's why the schooling system, which is another podcast for a completely different day.
Let's not get started on that.
The memory banks of the schooling system, and just regurgitating information and being the smartest person because you can climb a rope, one system, I'm not even going to start on that because we'll be here for another hour. Yes. So Dave, just what we're going to do now is I talked to you before we started. We're going to do a 10 quick fire question round, okay? Just a sporadic 10 questions. They don't have anything to do with anything. They're just a way to lighten the mood and just throw out some answers. So you're not allowed to think. I give you the question and you come back with the first answer that comes to your head, okay?
Okay.
And a lot of the time, it won't make any sense, but let's just go with it, right?
Okay, let's have a crack.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how cool are you?
8.
What is your favorite summer activity?
Golf.
If you were stranded on a tropical island with 2 things, what would they be?
My toothbrush and my golf clubs.
If your plane was about to crash, who would you want sitting next to you?
Oh, wow. I want to say my wife, but that's so bad.
I get it. I get your point, though.
Yeah, like I hope she's not sitting somewhere else. I'd want someone sitting beside me whose life was going to end already, because it'd be a terrible waste of someone who.
Let's look at it in a positive way. Let's spend the last moments with. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, but if you put it that way, definitely. My wife and or my kids. You gave me one choice. Yeah. My wife, just so I could let her know, to make sure that she knows what to tell the kids.
Perfect. If you could teleport, where would you go and why?
If I could teleport, where would I go and why? Ooh, I would go to the moon, because I want to see if that damn flag is actually there.
Yeah. That's a brilliant one. Okay. What is your favorite cuisine?
My favorite cuisine. Wow. Simply medium rare steak.
Simple. Simple. Yeah.
Yes.
When I dance, I look like.
When I dance, I look like Michael Jackson and Elvis Presley's love child.
Okay. Are you a morning or a night person?
Yes.
And
I am a morning or a night person.
yes. And if you could write a book about your life, what would it be called?
Oh, wow. If I could write a book about my life, what would it be called? I would just call it Dave.
Yeah.
Like literally, it would just be Dave.
There you go. There you go. That's the end of your 10 quite quiet questions, and I love that. Gets you to think outside the box a little bit.
Yeah, well, sad. That's just where my brain goes. The first thing, like, I just saw this cover. It said Dave on it, and I'm like, the last one, I'm like, I guess I would just call it Dave. It's a book of my life. Why would I what else would I call it?
And there's and it's like that fingerprint, isn't it? There'll be no one that's gonna come that's you, and there'll be no one ever that will be you when you've gone. So let's honor our unique individuality. And
well, see, the subtitle to the thing, because it's the same message I've given my children as they've grown up, and it would say, "Made different to make a difference."
Yeah, perfect.
Made different to make a difference.
Right.
Because I always told my kids growing up, they're like, "Dad, I wish I was normal. I wish I was like all the other kids." I said, Jordan, you were made different to make a difference. It's your job to go find out what that difference is, but there's a reason why you're different.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Now, as we approach the end of the podcast, there's a couple more questions I'd like to ask, just to give a little bit of a deep insight into yourself. Now, we're going to fast forward 100 years into the future, when the last moments of your life, and you don't have enough energy to speak, but you have enough energy to write down 3 words. Now, these 3 words have helped you and resonated with you all your life, and you hope by sharing them, they can help people that are listening today. What would those 3 words be for you, and why?
Passion, anticipate, and simplicity. Passion, not because of the modern day definition of passion. If you go to the root of the word, or the etymology of the word passion, like things that I'm passionate about, to me, my passion is my ability to endure. It's like the ability to endure suffering. So passion is all about, passion of the Christ. It's about like suffering, but I don't like to think of it like, what am I willing to suffer for? It's what am I willing to not give up on? So what things I'm most passionate about is my endurance, right? And then anticipate for me, because it's always about acting in advance. Like I always say, I have a passion for purpose and an obsession with relevance. And so for me, like anticipate, I would just please anticipate more. We live in our generation's most uncertain of times. So start to anticipate because things are going to happen. Like that's a given. Stuff around you is going to change. That's a given. It's your ability to anticipate the things that and act in advance of. And then simplicity for me is the last thing is, I just think we try to make things too complicated. And I would just challenge everybody out there from a word is, how can you simplify your life? And that is, and one of my buddies, he looks at all my stuff and he goes, Dave, you simplify everything. And the reason why it's so simple, the work that you do and the way you go about it, is because you add value by removing things that don't. So we add value by removing things that don't. So take all the crap that doesn't add value to your life, and you'll have more value in your life.
Yes.
By simplifying your life. We make it too complicated. So passion, anticipate, and simplicity would be my 3 words.
Perfect. Now, this podcast is called Bigger Than the Hustle, and right now you're bigger than the world. So I've got a microphone that's connected to 7.58 billion people on this planet.
Wow.
They can all hear you. They're all conscious. They're all awake. There's no language barrier, and they're all eager to hear what you've got to say. Now, if I hand this over to you for the next 30 seconds, what would your message be to the world?
Start the clock now.
Yes.
Life is short. Follow your heart more than your head. But be urgently patient. Act with a sense of urgency, but be patient for the results. And that you're only ever going to learn from doing. So get out and do stuff. be willing to fall down, but also be able to get back up, because it's a skill or an ability to get back up. And then make sure you be of service to others. There's no greater honor or reward in life than being of service to others. And I know Bhavik mentioned earlier in the podcast today about the shining a light on people. One of my favorite quotes of all time, which I'll end this with in front of this microphone before I disappear for the rest of my life, is that a candle loses nothing from lighting another.
Perfect. Love that. And I love the all the analogies you came up with, but the patience for the results, and I think that's so much of life has become. Everyone, there's so much impatience now. It's become an instant gratification world. They quickly, everything quick, and there's so much. There's so much value in patiently waiting the result when you're putting all the right steps in place, and you're not seeing it, and you're having the faith that just doing it will get you, the outcome you desire. Whether that, and a lot of the time will be so much better than what you thought in the first place. Just by putting the work, right? So at this juncture, Dave, I'd really, really like to thank you. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your wisdom, for sharing your light with us, the listeners. And I get, I've always said this on podcasts, is that I get so much enjoyment just from being in this conversation. Even if I didn't share it with anyone, there's so much it lights me up. Just being in conversation with people that not are just making a difference in the world, but are making difference within themselves to be of service and be, the light within their world. So I really like to thank you at this juncture for being that type of person and, sharing and always creating something that's going to be of service long after you're gone. Just before we go, Dave, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, actually, the last thing I'd like to say is to yourself. Thank you so much for this podcast. Like, literally, this has been the most challenging yet fun and exciting podcast. I listened to a few episodes of every podcast that I'm blessed and privileged to be interviewed on, and I listened to a few of yours. But the questions that you have asked have forced me to, these are not questions that I've been asked many a time. So kudos to you. So thank you to you for forcing me to think. But not only just think, but at a much deeper level than I'm used to, because a lot of the stuff is I know my stuff. Business stuff, I know it. But you asked, the only thing you asked me before this podcast is to be willing to be my vulnerable and authentic self.
Yes.
I'm I can do that, no problems. But you asked me the questions that held me to account to being that vulnerable and authentic self. So thank you. No. I've got this really good vibe right now, feeling right now. I'm like, and that's because of what you've brought up. You've stirred those questions. It's like anything. I've had to dig deep into those moments in my life where they're cherished moments, and my whole mine doesn't know the difference between what's real or perceived. So it's feeling like those moments again. And that's thanks to you asking those questions. So I'm like, how cool is this?
Perfect. And I'm so glad because I feel like that every week when I'm doing this. I'm so happy that energy is being transferred through the screen, through technology, through to you, another human being, so you can continue on your path. And what I always say is when I finish these, I'm buzzing. So I feel like I want to create more, and there's a purpose to us being here as human beings, and why we were meant to connect today, and why we were meant to have this conversation.
Yeah. And like I say, that is it. The energy level that you put, it's like as if we're in the same room together. Yeah. And that's a very special gift that you have. So kudos to you for that. Man, I'm serious. I don't feel like this often after I feel pumped and excited after a podcast, but I'm contemplative now. It's it's just an awesome feeling.
Perfect. There you go. See, there you go. So
how neat is that?
I've accessed the human within the entrepreneur, which was the whole point of the podcast, the human within the entrepreneur. There you go. Thank you, Dave. Now, I was Bhavik Patel. I'm the host of Bigger Than the Hustle. And right now, I'd like to leave you with a few thoughts before we go. Big energy leads to big thoughts. Big thoughts lead to big ideas. Big ideas lead to big actions. And big actions lead to a big life. So keep thinking big. Until next week, goodbye.
You have one life, just live it, and always make the most of your life. whatever aspirations, whatever you want to do, just go for it. Like, don't ever think you can't do anything.